We did it, y'all! I mean, get the champagne on ice, gather the town folks, invite them over here. We have slain the inflation beast. Well, that's at least what the media wants you to think. That's what the politicians want you to think. That's actually what all the economists want you to think. You see, last month is the first time in 4 years that inflation has gone down. So we have slayed the beast. I think we should celebrate. But I really think what we should do is realize that these economists, politicians, the media, and everybody else are gaslighting the American people into believing that things are actually getting better. When you go out, you go to the grocery store, you go to the gas pump, does it feel like it's getting better? My name's Chris Naugle, and this is What Now? What's next for inflation? So because mainstream economists and all the others are gaslighting the American folks into believing that Bidenomics, into believing that the Fed, into believing that things are actually getting better and that inflation is cooling, they've got us all tricked. They've got us all believing this white noise, this big lie. First off, from where I sit, somebody that studies this stuff on a normal basis, all I can tell you is this is misleading and very dangerous. Because I don't care what you look at, price of goods and services are up at least 20%. In some cases, in food, for example, over 100%. Is that slaying the beast? Is that worth celebrating? I mean, do you really want to break open the bottle of champagne? I mean, if you do, invite me over, I'll be there. But for me, when you look at what just happened, when you look at the inflation numbers, which really aren't telling you the whole story, when you look at where the price of things are, from cars to lawnmowers to just everything, my gosh, you can't even get your sink unplugged for less than double where it was not just 5 years ago. And you want to tell me that that's a good thing? You see, when inflation goes into mode like it did here, after printing $5.2 trillion, that's just a little piece of it. Prices don't go back down. Yes, I know last month was the first time prices actually went down, but that doesn't mean prices are going to go back. That means that you need to realize that the price of goods and services and everything that we know are going to remain at these heightened levels. So don't get all excited. Don't get, yourself in a little frizzy thinking, oh my gosh, it's time. We are finally beating this. Bidenomics worked. Folks, Bidenomics? Politicians have nothing to do with inflation. Nothing at all. I love it when they were coming up with those new policies, the new Green Deal or the Green New Deal that they couldn't get passed. Then all of a sudden it became the Inflation Reduction Act and it went through. As if the Inflation Reduction Act actually did anything to reduce inflation. If you read that, which I didn't read the whole thing, but I read the highlights, I didn't see one thing in there that reduced inflation. Matter of fact, I saw things that increased inflation, and well, the facts are in and the news is in, it actually did increase inflation. So why is inflation actually going down? Really, you're wondering that? Haven't you seen that the Fed raised interest rates, made everything cost even more for you? As if inflation wasn't enough, let's now tack on a much higher interest rate, because that is how they did it. And not only that, have you been to the bank lately to try to get a loan? A little harder, isn't it? Yeah, because they've literally pulled the levers. They increased interest rates, they decreased money supply, and not only that, they basically said to the banks, and you don't know this, make it really hard to get money. Folks, if that's the world you want to live in, where things are harder to buy, they cost more because of inflation, the interest rate on everything is even higher, and you want to call that a win, then I don't know where you belong. But it isn't the United States of America. You see, what actually happened is a complete and utter failure, and they are gaslighting us all. So that's where we've been, that's where we're at. But let's look where we're going, and the easiest way to do that is just, turn the news on. Follow what Jerome Powell is saying from the Fed. And as you can see right here, what he's saying is higher rates for longer. But they are opening the door, now the second time this year, for the possibility of rate cuts in the future. But they're saying they want to see more data. They want to make sure that inflation is really moving down, because the last time they got excited and they went out there and they said, hey, we're opening the door for 3 rate cuts, and then Wall Street built in like 6 or 7 rate cuts into the numbers, but who's keeping track of that? But anyway, he's saying we want to see more data to make sure we don't have the same mistake where we make some moves or say something and all of a sudden inflation goes back up. But let's just look at where we're headed. Right now, this is July of 2024, an election year. That's right. You've got 3 candidates running for presidency, and I would say this probably, we would have said this before, but this absolutely will be the most controversial election of all times. That's my opinion. But, with an assassination attempt recently on one of the candidates and everything else going on, I mean, come on. We're literally in for a real show here. But what the real show is not the presidential campaign. The real show is what's about to happen to the overall economy. And when Jerome Powell from the Fed says they're thinking that they're going to start decreasing rates, do you know what I think? Knowing what I know, I think that means we're headed to a slowing economy. What also that says is when the economy slows, guess what else is going to happen? People are going to lose jobs. When the economy slows down, when interest rates start coming down, people will lose their jobs, which means they will have less disposable income, which means they will not qualify for the house that normally they would have when they were employed, which means there will be less jobs out there. People will spend less money, happening already. And because of all that, restaurants will close, airlines will start to suffer a little bit because people won't travel as much. The trickle effect, the domino effect will kick in and everything will start slowing down. It will become harder for you to get loans. Even though rates are cheaper, it will be harder for you to get that loan. Folks, this is gonna happen. Now, the word recession is whatever. I think we'll be in a recession in 2025 because I've done the homework and I have looked at other presidential elections, actually 5 of them. There's another video. Matter of fact, why don't we just pause for a second, because you should probably know when I put a new video up. So why don't you click that subscribe button right there? And also right above, there's a little bell. Smash that bell every single time. Smash the bell so that when I put new content out, you'll be notified like my little Wilson punching bag here. You'll be notified each and every single video. That was pretty cool that I put out. But anyway, back into what's going on. So let's just talk a little bit about, unemployment. As all of you know, and some of you want to give credit to Bidenomics and everything else, unemployment numbers have been very low. And that, kind of makes sense. The whole world shut down, the country shut down, and then they opened back up so people went back to work. They cut off the checks for people to sit home late. Anyway, you know why unemployment numbers are low. But unemployment numbers and the jobs claims that are coming out, the job reports, you're not getting the whole picture there either. The job reports that come out usually look pretty good. In other words, there's more jobs than there are people to work. So the unemployment numbers are really low until they go and revise the numbers. Have you paid attention to the revisions? Because almost every jobs report they put out, they have revised numbers, and not in a good way. Matter of fact, they've revised them to say that the numbers for the amount of people unemployed are much higher. The number of jobs out there that are available are not suitable to even make a living for the majority of the people looking for work. So you've got a bunch of people looking for work and you've got a whole bunch of jobs, but the jobs don't make sense for the people looking for work. Go around and talk to anyone that's out of work. They've been on the job hunt. If there's so many jobs, why can't they find a job? Well, because they don't want to go work at a restaurant making minimum wage that they can't even afford to keep their family supported. That's why. You see, not only that, most of the numbers in the jobs reports, guess where they're coming from? Government jobs. The government is the #1 employer right now. It's not private industry that's hiring all these people. So when we start slowing down, when the stock market takes a plunge, which it's going to, you're going to start seeing unemployment numbers go up. It just has to happen that way. And all of that is going to have a trickle-down effect to the way we live our lives. All of us. Okay? I don't care if you're talking the lower class, the middle class, the upper class, all of us. will feel the pinch of this one. And you might be asking, well, when? Probably after the election. Remember I mentioned that video that I made, which I'll give you at the end. Probably right after the election, you'll start seeing things slip. And depending on who gets in office, it's not going to matter who gets in, the same thing will happen. But if a certain candidate gets in, my guess, it will probably fall faster, which actually could be viewed as a positive. Because if you've been taking any of the advice I've been giving, if you've been listening to anything I've been teaching you about how to become your own bank, about how to position your money in safe assets like treasuries and literally just sit on the sidelines right now, if you've been doing that, you will be ready to take advantage of one of the biggest opportunities of your life. And it is coming to a theater near you very soon. You know when that new movie comes out and you look and you're like, oh, it's not till 2025. Well, that's this new movie. This new movie, which has a theme called the recession that you can slay. That's right, because you can. You can beat this recession. You can get ahead during this recession. I know everybody else is gonna have a hard time, but you can get ahead if you are ready. Is your house in order? Are your finances in order? Or are you going into this thing with a spending habit, high credit cards, lots of debt, the new cars in the driveway with the big old car payments? Is that how you're going into this thing? Because you will be destroyed. It's time to get out of debt. Anyone that goes into a recessionary period or a down economy period with very little to no debt wins every single time. I'm going to go back to Jerome Powell. You see, in this article by Reuters, there's a very unique thing that he says, and I want you to pay attention to this. He says that there will be rate cuts when they're ready, regardless of the political calendar. Now, I don't know if I believe this, because Powell, the Fed, they usually make some decisions because of political reasons. But he's standing up saying, it doesn't matter what the political calendar is going to be. We're going to march to the beat of our own drum. And good for them if they do, because they shouldn't make decisions in haste, or they shouldn't make decisions just because of a political agenda. So I give him some credit for that. But what does that mean to you? Well, I can tell you what it means just from a macro standpoint. It means that they're gonna hold rates higher until we have an economy and a market that is falling, until we can actually see that we are headed to a recession. Because listen, during a recession, the Fed always reacts almost identical. They always drop interest rates to make money cheaper. Then what they do is they fire up the printing press to print more money to make it so there's more money in the economy, more money in the system. They do lots of things with bonds and with the treasuries and with the swaps. They got all sorts of tools in their tool chest, but the main lever that they will pull will be interest rates. Rates will be lower, but they will not be lower until we are starting to see signs of a recession. That's what's going to happen. And that's not just my opinion. And in conclusion, I think this one thing really will make some sense to a lot of you because it's visual. So right over here in this article by Visual Capitalist, it says what history reveals about interest rate cuts. And if you look at this, the US has experienced 7 rate cutting cycles over the past 50 years. Now you notice I said cycles, okay? On average, they've lasted 26 months and decreased rates by 6.35 percentage points. But the thing that I really want you to look at when you're looking at this chart is interest rate changes have a significant ripple effect on the economy and financial markets. So the first thing I want to point out right here with this chart is when you look at all these different time frames, 2019 to 2020, 2007, 2008, 1981 to 83, 84 to 86, you know, the 2000 to 2003, the 74 to 77, 89 to 92. What happened in every one of those scenarios? Well, yeah, number one, interest rates were on the decline, but also, do you remember 2007, 2008? That was right before what? The Great Recession. How about 2000 to 2003? That was right before the dot-com crash. How about 19 to 20? That was right before the pandemic or into the pandemic. And every one of those time frames, depending on how old you are, were right before or right during a recession. That's very important. Rates get cut in lieu of recessions. So then when we look at this next chart, the economic response to rate cuts, when you can look at this, it just basically is showing you what happens. Inflation tended to fall due to slowing economic growth. Recession, slowing growth. Recession, slowing growth. Okay, and that's what happened during Fed cuts. Over here in the orange, change from the end of cycle. So 1 year after the final rate cut, however, inflation picked back up. So they're saying it went up by 2 percentage points after. Down here in the purple, you can see this one saying that with the exception of a few periods, spending growth rose in all cases during interest rate cut cycles, which makes sense. People will spend more money when money is cheaper, not when it's more expensive. And then over here in the orange again, it says 1 year out, spending softened on average. Once again, the pandemic and GFC were outliers, but making no way about it, spending softens. And when you look at this chart down here, this one shows what happens to stocks during those periods, stocks and bonds. Well, clearly bonds are going to outperform stocks in these kinds of periods. Right here, bonds outperformed while interest rates were being cut. That just makes sense because of fear, because the stock market is going down. So people have the flight to safety. They're looking for safety and conservative investments, which bonds always did. But holding stocks and real estate has historically led to higher gains when rate cut cycles end. So after the Fed cuts the rates, stocks will start to go back up. And that's when you start the uptick of the next cycle. And over here, this is just a prediction of what interest rates are going to do. So they're basically predicting that over the period of time that's coming up through 2026, rates will be about half of where they're at. So folks, all I'm trying to give you is just a snapshot of where we're headed because of where we're at now. This is just a normal economic cycle, but this one's not normal because we are coming out of the longest bull run in history because of artificial stimulus. $5.2 trillion printed during the pandemic and unbelievable responses by the Fed in what they did with rates, money printing, and a lot of other things have resulted in what you're seeing now, which some people say will be the biggest bust ever because the balloon has been blown up so big that eventually it's going to burst. So out of all this data and all this talk about Fed and everything else that's going on, the one thing I want you to get from this data is things next year and the year after will be worse than they are today. So that's not to scare you. That should actually get you motivated to take action. Get you motivated to actually go out there, pay off debts. Stop putting money into the stock market and taking excessive risk. Stop investing in things that you don't know, like, and understand. Listen, Will Rogers said the best quote ever. He said, the biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. It's what they think they know that just ain't so. Do not think that you know what you don't know. The markets will not continue to go up. Unemployment numbers will not stay this low. Inflation will not come down fast enough. Those are facts, and you better get ready. Folks, learn how to become your own bank. Learn how to be in control of your money. Learn how to invest in things that you know, like, and understand. Things that are secured. Be the bank, folks. Act like the bank, and you will definitely come through this thing as the winner. Thanks for joining me. My name's Chris Naugle. This has been another episode of What Now? What's next for inflation? See you next time. Folks, if you liked what I just talked about in this video, you're going to love this one. What happened during the last 5 presidential elections? Check it out. We'll see you next time.